My name is Brielle Morgan. I'm 28, and I just discovered that my parents have been playing me for a fool my entire adult life. What started as an innocent favor to help them set up cloud storage on their iPad ended with me uncovering vacation photos from France, a trip they took while simultaneously begging me for $60,000 to cover my sister's emergency tuition payments. For 7 years, I believed my family was struggling financially, scraping together every penny to support my younger sister Madison's college dreams. I've been sending monthly checks, skipping my own vacations, and living in a cramped studio apartment to help them. But those photos. They showed my parents sipping champagne in five-star Parisian hotels, shopping on the Champs, Élysées, and living their best life, all funded by my guilt and their lies. Before we dive into this family betrayal that changed everything, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, and if this hook already has you hooked, smash that like button and subscribe because this revenge story is about to get wild. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when the truth comes out. The deception began innocently enough, or so I thought. 7 years ago, when Madison was starting her freshman year at a prestigious private university, my parents called me in tears. Mom's voice trembled as she explained how Dad's construction business had taken a massive hit during the economic downturn, and they were struggling to make ends meet. Madison had worked so hard to get into her dream school, they said, but without financial help, she'd have to transfer to a community college. Brielle, sweetheart, Mom pleaded during that first phone call, we know you're doing well with your marketing job, and we wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. Could you help us with just a few thousand for Madison's first semester? We promise we'll pay you back once Dad's business picks up. I didn't hesitate. Madison was my baby sister, 10 years younger than me, and I'd always felt protective of her. Growing up, I was the responsible older sister who helped with homework, drove her to soccer practice, and cheered from the sidelines at every game. The thought of her dreams being crushed because of money made my heart ache. That few thousand quickly became a pattern. Every semester brought a new crisis. Unexpected fee increases, required textbooks that cost hundreds of dollars, mandatory study abroad programs that were essential for Madison's major. The requests grew larger and more frequent. What started as $3,000 became $5,000, then $8,000, then $12,000 per semester. The university raised tuition again, Dad would explain apologetically. And Madison needs those extra credits to graduate on time. You know how expensive it gets with all the lab fees for her pre-med track. I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? These were my parents, the people who raised me to value family above everything else. They'd sacrificed for me throughout my childhood, or so I thought. Dad worked long hours in construction. Mom took on part-time jobs at the local grocery store. They drove old cars, lived in the same modest house for 20 years, and rarely went out to eat. Everything pointed to a family genuinely struggling to make ends meet. Meanwhile, I was climbing the corporate ladder at a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. My salary had grown from $45,000 to $85,000 over those 7 years, but my lifestyle hadn't changed much. While my colleagues bought new cars and took exotic vacations, I drove my reliable but aging Honda Civic and spent my weekends at home streaming Netflix and eating homemade meals. Every extra dollar went to my family. I convinced myself it was temporary. Once Madison graduated and Dad's business recovered, things would go back to normal. I could start saving for my own future, maybe buy a house, take that European vacation I'd been dreaming about, or even go back to school for my MBA. But for now, family came first. The guilt trips were masterfully orchestrated. Mom would send me photos of Madison studying late into the night, describing how hard she was working and how grateful she was for my support. Dad would call with updates about potential business opportunities that never quite materialized, always next month, always just around the corner. And Madison, she played her part perfectly, sending me heartfelt thank you cards and updates about her academic achievements. "I couldn't do this without you, Bree," she'd write in her careful handwriting. "You're the best sister anyone could ask for. I promise I'll pay you back someday when I'm a doctor." Looking back, I realize how isolated I'd become in my dedication to supporting them. I'd turned down invitations from friends because I couldn't afford to go out. I'd ended relationships because I couldn't explain why I lived like a college student despite earning a decent salary. My entire social life revolved around work and family obligations, leaving little room for personal growth or happiness. The financial strain was taking its toll. I'd maxed out 2 credit cards and depleted my savings account multiple times. When my laptop died, I had to put the replacement on a payment plan. When my car needed major repairs, I borrowed money from my 401k. But every time I felt overwhelmed, my parents would remind me of the importance of family loyalty and how proud they were of my generosity. By year 5, subtle inconsistencies began to surface, though I dismissed them as coincidences or misunderstandings. During a family video call, I noticed Mom wearing what looked like an expensive new necklace, delicate gold, with what appeared to be genuine pearls. When I complimented it, she quickly tucked it under her shirt and mumbled something about it being old costume jewelry she'd found in a drawer. A few months later, Madison posted an Instagram story from what looked like an upscale restaurant, complete with cloth napkins and wine glasses. The caption read, "Date night with the parents." When I asked about it during our next conversation, Mom laughed it off, claiming they'd used a Groupon and it was a once-in-a-lifetime splurge for Madison's birthday. The explanations always seemed reasonable in the moment, but they began to accumulate in the back of my mind like puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit together. There was the time Dad mentioned getting his truck detailed, which seemed unnecessary for someone struggling financially. Or when Mom casually referenced a new coffee maker that made the most amazing espresso, despite previously complaining about their broken old machine that they couldn't afford to replace. I started paying closer attention to the background details during our video calls. Their house looked different. Not dramatically so, but there were small updates I hadn't noticed before. The living room had new throw pillows that coordinated perfectly with fresh paint on the walls. The kitchen counter held a fancy fruit bowl that definitely wasn't there before. When I asked about these changes, they'd brush off my questions with vague answers about finding deals or DIY projects Dad worked on during slow weekends. The most jarring inconsistency came during Madison's junior year. She mentioned being stressed about an upcoming spring break trip to Cancun with her sorority sisters, worried about the cost. I immediately offered to help, as I always did, but she quickly backtracked. "Oh no, Bree, you've done enough. Mom and Dad said they could handle this one since it's, a once-in-a-lifetime experience." Wait. Mom and Dad could suddenly afford a $1,000 spring break trip, but they needed my help with textbook money. When I gently questioned this during my next call with my parents, they seemed flustered. "Well, we've been saving our pennies," Mom said, her voice higher than usual. "And Madison's worked so hard we thought she deserved something special." Don't worry, it's not affecting her tuition situation at all. But it didn't add up. If they had pennies to save for luxury trips, why was I still sending monthly payments for what they claimed were basic educational expenses? I began to feel like I was walking on eggshells during family conversations, afraid to ask too many questions, but unable to ignore the growing list of inconsistencies. The guilt was overwhelming. Was I being paranoid and ungrateful? These were my parents, the people who had supposedly sacrificed everything for their daughters. Yet something felt fundamentally wrong. The breaking point came during Madison's senior year, when she casually mentioned having her nails done for her sorority formal. Not a basic manicure, but an elaborate set with intricate designs that I knew cost at least $80. When I'd asked for the same amount just a month earlier to help with my own car registration fees, I'd felt guilty for even requesting it. Madison seems to be treating herself well these days, I commented during our next family call, trying to keep my tone light. Oh, that was just a special treat from her sorority big sister, Mom replied quickly. You know how those girls like to spoil each other. But I'd looked at the Instagram post more carefully. The nail salon was clearly upscale, and Madison was tagged with the location. I'd driven past that same salon in my own college town. It was the kind of place that required appointments weeks in advance and charged premium prices. No college student was casually treating their sorority little sister to services there. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing stronger with each passing month. I found myself screenshotting social media posts, taking notes during phone calls, and questioning every story they told me. The sister who had once trusted her family implicitly was becoming a detective in her own life, and I hated the person I was becoming. Still, I continued sending the money. Family loyalty ran deep, and the fear of being wrong, of destroying relationships over suspicions that might be unfounded, kept me trapped in the pattern. But the foundation of trust was cracking, and it would only take one more revelation to bring the whole structure crashing down. The moment that shattered my world came on an ordinary Tuesday evening in March. Madison had called earlier panicking about a surprise fee for her final semester, something about graduation requirements and additional credits that would cost an extra $8,000. Despite my growing suspicions, I'd agreed to help transferring the money from my already strained savings account. Later that evening, Mom called, asking for help with technology issues. Their iPad was acting up, and they couldn't access their photos anymore. As the family's unofficial IT support, I agreed to walk them through setting up iCloud backup during my lunch break the next day. Just be patient with us, honey, Mom said with that familiar laugh. You know how hopeless we are with this computer stuff. The next day I called them and spent an hour on the phone carefully explaining each step of the backup process. Everything seemed routine until Mom mentioned that some old photos weren't uploading properly. She asked me to remotely access their iPad to fix the issue, which I'd done countless times before for various technical problems. There's a folder called Recent Trips that seems stuck, she said. Can you take a look? I accessed their photo library and began troubleshooting the upload issue. That's when I saw it, a thumbnail image that made my blood run cold. It was a photo of my parents standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, both wearing expensive-looking outfits and huge smiles. The timestamp showed it was taken just 3 months ago, right around the time they'd begged me for emergency money to cover Madison's housing deposit. My hands shaking, I opened the folder. What I found made me physically sick. Dozens of photos from what was clearly an extensive, expensive vacation to France. My parents dining at Michelin-starred restaurants, staying in 5-star hotels with ornate lobbies and luxury bedding, shopping in high-end boutiques along the Champs-Élysées. There were pictures of them taking a Seine River cruise, visiting the Palace of Versailles, and enjoying wine tastings and what looked like exclusive vineyard tours. But it wasn't just the vacation itself, it was the evidence of a lifestyle I'd never seen before. Mom was wearing designer clothing I'd never noticed during our video calls, carrying handbags that cost more than my monthly rent. Dad looked relaxed and tanned, sporting a watch that was definitely not the old Timex he'd worn throughout my childhood. And if you think this discovery was shocking, just wait until you hear what else I found in those photos. But first, I need to know, have you ever had that gut-dropping moment when you realized someone you trusted was living a complete lie? Drop a heart in the comments if you've been there, and hit that subscribe button, because this family drama is about to explode in ways you won't believe. I scrolled through months of photos with growing horror. There were images from what appeared to be multiple trips, a weekend in Napa Valley, a cruise to the Bahamas, several visits to expensive-looking restaurants and resorts. These weren't once-in-a-lifetime splurges. This was a consistent pattern of luxury living that had been hidden from me completely. The most damning evidence came in the form of a photo showing Madison at what was clearly a high-end spa getting a massage. She was tagged at a resort in Scottsdale, Arizona, with a caption that read, "Much needed sister time with Mom." The timestamp showed this was taken during her finals week when she'd supposedly been too stressed and busy to call me. Back for 3 days. I sat in my cramped studio apartment, staring at photos of my family living like millionaires while I ate ramen noodles and skipped meals to afford their emergencies. The contrast was so stark it felt surreal. While I'd been sacrificing everything to support what I believed was a struggling family, they'd been living a secret life of luxury funded entirely by my guilt and their manipulation. The technical issue was easily fixed, just a simple storage problem, but I couldn't bring myself to tell Mom I'd completed the task. Instead, I hung up the phone, claiming I needed to research the problem further and would call back later. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, unable to focus on work, as the implications of what I'd discovered sank in. Every memory from the past 7 years took on a different meaning. Every tear-filled phone call, every guilt-inducing conversation about family loyalty, every grateful message from Madison, it had all been an elaborate performance. The photos told a story of calculated deception. These weren't people who had stumbled into some unexpected windfall and were too embarrassed to tell me. The timeline showed consistent luxury spending that would have required significant disposable income that supposedly didn't exist because they needed my help with basic expenses. I thought about all the things I'd given up, the relationships I'd ended because I couldn't afford to maintain them, the career opportunities I'd passed up because I couldn't risk my steady income, the dreams I'd deferred because family came first. While I'd been living like a monk dedicated to their financial stability, they'd been living like celebrities. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd ever thought possible. This wasn't just about money, it was about the fundamental trust that forms the foundation of family relationships. They hadn't just lied about their finances, they'd constructed an entire false reality designed to exploit my love and sense of duty. As the evening wore on, I found myself calculating the total amount I'd sent them over the years. Between direct transfers, emergency payments, and additional surprise expenses, the number was staggering over $180,000. Money that could have bought me a house, funded my own education, or secured my financial future. Instead, it had subsidized their secret luxury lifestyle while I struggled to make ends meet. The most painful part was realizing how expertly they'd manipulated my emotions. Every time I'd felt overwhelmed by the financial strain, they'd reminded me of family values and shared sacrifice. They'd made me feel selfish for even questioning their requests, while simultaneously living proof that those requests were based on complete lies. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Madison's upcoming graduation, an event I'd been looking forward to for years, as the culmination of our family's collective sacrifice. Now I knew the truth, there had been no sacrifice on their part, only mine. Unable to sleep and consumed by a mixture of rage and heartbreak, I decided I needed to know the full extent of their deception. If they could lie about basic financial struggles while living in luxury, what else had they hidden from me? I started with social media, something I'd never thought to scrutinize before. Madison's Instagram account was set to private, but I'd been following her for years. Looking back through her posts with new eyes, I began to see a pattern I'd previously missed or rationalized away. The study group photos often showed elaborate meals at restaurants I couldn't afford. Her library sessions frequently included coffee cups from high-end cafes that charged $6 for a latte. The casual dorm hangouts featured name-brand snacks and expensive skincare products casually visible in the background. But it was her tagged photos that revealed the most damning evidence. Friends had tagged her in dozens of photos I'd never seen, images from expensive restaurants, exclusive events, and luxury shopping trips. There she was at a $200 per person wine tasting, tagged in photos from a weekend ski trip to Aspen, and attending what appeared to be a formal gala with a ticket price I could see listed on the event page, $500 per person. I cross-referenced these photos with the timeline of financial requests I'd been tracking in my head. The Aspen ski trip happened the same week they'd called me, sobbing about an emergency textbook fee that would cost $800. The wine tasting was posted just days after I'd sent money for Madison's unexpected lab supplies. My parents' Facebook accounts were less active, but equally revealing upon closer inspection. Dad's profile showed him tagged at expensive golf courses. Membership fees at these places started at $2,000 per month. Mom appeared in photos from what were clearly high-end social events wearing different designer outfits in each image. They'd been careful not to post these photos themselves, but friends and family had tagged them, creating a digital trail they'd apparently forgotten about. The most shocking discovery came when I decided to look up their address on real estate websites. Their house, which I'd always thought of as modest, had been completely renovated. According to public records, they'd taken out a home equity loan 3 years ago and had been steadily increasing the property value with upscale improvements. The house was now estimated to be worth nearly $400,000, double what they'd paid for it 20 years ago. I found permits for a $50,000 kitchen renovation, a $15,000 bathroom remodel, and installation of a $12,000 hot tub. These improvements had all been completed during the time period when I was supposedly keeping them afloat financially. The timeline made it clear they'd been using my money to qualify for loans and maintain their credit while funding their actual lifestyle through other means. But where was their money really coming from, I'd always assumed? Dad's construction business was struggling, but a quick search of business licensing records told a different story. His company had secured several major commercial contracts over the past 5 years, including a $2.3 million shopping center renovation and a $1.8 million office building project. Public contract records showed consistent work and substantial payments. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture of elaborate financial fraud that had been perpetrated against me for years. They weren't struggling, they were thriving. My regular payments had simply been extra income that allowed them to live even more extravagantly than their already substantial means permitted. I found myself wondering if Madison was complicit in the deception or if she was as much a victim as I was. But as I scrolled through more of her social media activity, that question was answered. There were screenshots of text conversations she'd posted to her close friends' stories, complaining about having to play poor during family video calls, and joking about her generous sister who always falls for the sob. Stories. The betrayal was complete. This wasn't a case of parents who had gotten in over their heads or made poor financial decisions. This was a calculated, long-term scheme designed to extract money from me while they lived a life of luxury. They'd weaponized my love for family against me, turning my desire to help into a tool for their exploitation. I spent hours that night documenting everything I'd found, taking screenshots and organizing evidence. Part of me couldn't believe what I was uncovering, but the proof was overwhelming and undeniable. Every photo, every post, every public record painted the same picture. I'd been funding their secret wealthy lifestyle while living like a pauper myself. The emotional impact was devastating, but it was also clarifying. For the first time in 7 years, I could see my situation clearly, without the fog of manipulation and guilt they'd used to cloud my judgment. I wasn't being ungrateful or paranoid. I was being financially abused by the people who were supposed to love and protect me. As dawn broke, I realized I had a choice to make. I could confront them directly and hope for an explanation, or I could take time to plan my response carefully. Given the level of deception involved, I decided that a direct confrontation would likely result in more lies and manipulation. If they could maintain this level of deception for 7 years, they were experts at managing my reactions. Instead, I began formulating a plan that would give me the upper hand and ensure that justice would be served. They'd played the long game with me, and now it was time for me to return the favor. The week following my discovery was surreal. I had to continue our regular family communication while processing the magnitude of their betrayal and planning my response. Every conversation felt like an elaborate performance where I played the role of the naive, generous sister while they continued their charade of struggling parents. Madison called on Thursday, as she often did, with another emergency. This time it was graduation fees and cap and gown rental costs that would total $1,200. She delivered the request with the same breathless anxiety that had worked so effectively for years. Bree, I'm so sorry to ask again, but there are all these surprise costs for graduation that we didn't budget for. Mom and Dad are already stretched so thin, and I hate to burden you, but I don't know what else to do. For the first time in 7 years, I didn't immediately agree. Instead, I told her I needed to check my bank balance and would get back to her. The delay clearly frustrated her. I could hear it in her voice when she said, "Oh, okay, but the deadline is tomorrow, so please let me know as soon as possible." That conversation crystallized my plan. If they wanted to play games with money, I would give them a game they'd never forget. I started by consulting with a lawyer to understand my legal options. While the lawyer confirmed that what they'd done wasn't technically illegal since I'd given the money voluntarily, he helped me understand how to protect myself moving forward and suggested ways to document everything properly. Next, I opened a new bank account at a different institution and began transferring my remaining savings there. If my family could play the long game, so could I. I also started documenting every financial interaction we'd had, creating a spreadsheet that tracked dates, amounts, and the reasons they'd given for each request. The lawyer had given me an idea that felt like poetic justice. Since they'd used emotional manipulation to extract money from me, I would use the same tactics to expose their lies to our extended family and friends. I decided to plan a surprise graduation party for Madison, ostensibly to celebrate her achievements and thank everyone who had supported her education. But this party would serve a different purpose. It would be the venue for revealing the truth about their deception. I called my aunts, uncles, and family friends, explaining that I wanted to throw Madison a special graduation celebration to honor all the sacrifices our family had made for her education. I specifically mentioned how proud I was of my parents for prioritizing education despite their financial struggles, and how honored I felt to have been able to help support Madison's dreams. The response was overwhelming. Family members were eager to attend and celebrate what they believed was a true family success story. Several relatives mentioned how inspiring it was to see a family pull together during tough times, with multiple people praising my generosity and my parents' determination. Meanwhile, I continued my research into their finances. I discovered that Dad's business had been even more successful than I'd initially thought. Local newspaper archives showed him receiving a Contractor of the Year award 2 years ago, complete with quotes about his company's record-breaking year and expansion into luxury home construction. I also found their travel agent through tagged photos and, posing as a potential client, inquired about similar luxury European packages. The agent enthusiastically described the repeat clients who took multiple high-end trips per year, matching the description of my parents perfectly. When I mentioned I was inspired by friends who'd taken a recent France trip, she immediately knew who I was talking about and shared details about their upcoming Mediterranean cruise, another expensive vacation I knew nothing about. The final piece of my plan involved Madison's graduation ceremony itself. I volunteered to handle all the family coordination, offering to book hotel rooms and arrange transportation for our extended family who would be traveling to attend. My parents were thrilled by my initiative, praising my thoughtfulness and organization skills. but I had an ulterior motive. I booked everyone at the same upscale hotel where I'd seen my parents staying in their France photos, a detail I'd noticed in the background of several images. When the hotel manager mentioned that my parents were valued repeat customers who always enjoyed the presidential suite, I knew I had the final confirmation I needed. As graduation day approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Part of me hoped there would be some reasonable explanation for everything I'd discovered, some misunderstanding that would make sense of the contradictions. But the evidence was too overwhelming and their behavior too consistent for innocent explanations. I'd prepared a presentation for the graduation party, ostensibly a slideshow celebrating Madison's achievements and our family's journey. But woven throughout the celebration photos would be the evidence of their deception. Screenshots of their luxury vacations contrasted with the dates of their financial requests. Documentation of their actual business success alongside their claims of struggle and proof of their elaborate lifestyle funded by my sacrifices. The night before graduation, I called each of them separately to express my love and excitement for the next day. Their responses were perfect performances of gratitude and humility. Mom cried while thanking me for all my support. Dad praised my character and generosity, and Madison promised that she'd never forget everything I'd done for her. As I hung up after that final call, I realized that tomorrow would either repair our family relationships through honest conversation or destroy them completely through the revelation of truth. Either way, the 7-year charade was about to end. Graduation day arrived with perfect spring weather, the kind of day that should have been filled with nothing but joy and celebration. I arrived early at the ceremony, helping coordinate our large extended family group and making sure everyone had their tickets and knew the plan for post-ceremony activities. Madison looked beautiful in her cap and gown, beaming with pride as she posed for photos with Mom and Dad. Watching them together playing their roles perfectly, I felt a final pang of sadness for what our family could have been if they'd chosen honesty over manipulation. The ceremony itself was lovely, and I genuinely felt proud of Madison's academic achievements despite everything else. When her name was called, our entire family cheered loudly, and for a moment I could almost forget about the deception and just celebrate my little sister's success. But reality returned quickly as we headed to the restaurant I'd reserved for the graduation party. I'd chosen the same upscale venue where I'd seen photos of my parents dining during their financially struggling period. The irony wasn't lost on me when Dad commented appreciatively about the fancy restaurant choice, claiming it was probably too expensive but that I was too generous for my own good. 35 family members and friends had gathered to celebrate Madison's graduation and our family's story of perseverance through financial hardship. I stood up to give what everyone expected would be a heartfelt speech about family sacrifice and support. I want to thank everyone for being here today to celebrate Madison's incredible achievement. I began, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. Over the past 7 years, I've learned so much about family sacrifice and the importance of supporting each other through difficult times. The room was quiet, everyone smiling expectantly. Mom and Dad were beaming with pride. Madison was recording on her phone, and our relatives were preparing for what they thought would be an emotional tribute to family loyalty. I've prepared a little presentation to share some memories from Madison's college journey and show everyone how far our family has come together. I started the slideshow on the restaurant's screen. The first few slides were exactly what everyone expected: Madison's high school graduation photos, her acceptance letter, family pictures from her first day of college. But then the presentation took a different turn. Throughout Madison's education, Mom and Dad taught us about making sacrifices for family. I continued as a slide appeared, showing the timeline of financial requests alongside their actual vacation photos. They showed us what it means to prioritize education over personal luxuries. Gasps began to fill the room as people recognized my parents in the France photos, dressed in expensive clothes and dining at Michelin-starred restaurants. The dates on the screen showed these photos were taken during the same months I'd received desperate calls about tuition emergencies. For 7 years, I've been honored to support Madison's education by contributing over $180,000 to help our family through what I believed were genuine financial hardships, I said, my voice growing stronger as more evidence flashed on the screen. I lived in a studio apartment, drove an old car, and skipped meals because I believed my sacrifice was helping my family survive. The room had gone completely silent except for the sound of chairs shifting as people tried to process what they were seeing. Photos of luxury cruises, expensive spa days, and high-end shopping trips filled the screen, each one time-stamped during periods when I'd been told the family was struggling to pay basic bills. Mom and Dad had gone pale while Madison looked like she wanted to disappear entirely. Several relatives were openly staring at them with expressions of shock and disgust. I discovered last week that while I was sacrificing everything to support what I thought was a struggling family, they were actually living in luxury, taking multiple expensive vacations per year and renovating their home with high-end improvements. Dad's construction business has been thriving, securing multi-million-dollar contracts while they convinced me they were on the verge of financial ruin. I clicked to a slide showing Dad's business contracts and awards, alongside screenshots of Madison's social media posts bragging about playing poor during family video calls. The most painful part isn't the money, I continued, my voice now carrying the full weight of 7 years of suppressed hurt and anger. It's the realization that they turned my love for family into a weapon against me. They exploited my desire to help and turned it into a tool for their own enrichment. Uncle Mike stood up and walked out without saying a word. Aunt Sarah was openly crying, not from joy but from horror at what she was witnessing. Cousin Jennifer started taking pictures of the presentation screen with her phone. Madison, I said, turning to my sister, who was now hiding her face in her hands, you've worked hard in school, and I'm proud of your academic achievements. But you're also an adult who participated in a scheme to defraud me of nearly $200,000 while mocking me behind my back. The final slide showed a simple message. Effective immediately, the Bank of Brielle is permanently closed. I will not be providing any further financial support, and I will be pursuing legal options to recover what I can of the money obtained through deception. The silence that followed was deafening. Then chaos erupted as family members began demanding explanations from my parents. Dad tried to stammer something about misunderstandings and planning to pay everything back, but the evidence was too overwhelming for any believable defense. Mom attempted to turn the situation around, claiming I was being cruel and vindictive and trying to ruin Madison's special day. But Grandma Helen, our family matriarch, stood up and delivered the line that would become family legend. The only thing cruel here is what you've done to this girl. You should be ashamed of yourselves. One by one, family members approached me to offer support and expressed their disgust at my parents' behavior. Several relatives mentioned they'd always wondered how my parents could afford certain luxuries while claiming financial hardship, but had assumed there were private resources they didn't know about. The immediate aftermath was swift and decisive. By the end of the week, my parents had been effectively ostracized from most family gatherings. The story spread through our extended network, and their reputation in the community was destroyed when people realized the extent of their deception. Madison initially tried to contact me with apologies and explanations, but her messages revealed she was more upset about being exposed than genuinely remorseful for her actions. When she asked if I would still help with her medical school applications, I knew nothing had really changed for her. 3 months later, I received an unexpected call from a lawyer representing my parents. They wanted to work out a repayment plan and heal the family rift. It seemed their financial situation had become genuinely problematic now that their deception was public knowledge and their business reputation was damaged. I declined their offer. Some bridges once burned aren't meant to be rebuilt. Today, I'm living in a beautiful two-bedroom apartment, driving a reliable new car, and building the life I should have had all along. I've started dating again, made new friends, and even booked that European vacation I'd been dreaming about for years. The most unexpected outcome, I discovered that I'm much happier without people in my life who see my kindness as weakness to be exploited. Family isn't just about blood, it's about mutual respect, honesty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. So here's my question for all of you. Have you ever had to cut toxic family members out of your life, even when it meant losing relationships you thought were important? Sometimes, the people who hurt us most are the ones we're supposed to trust completely. Drop your own stories in the comments. I know I'm not the only one who's dealt with family betrayal. And if this story taught you anything about setting boundaries or recognizing manipulation, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life drama and justice stories because unfortunately I've learned that toxic family dynamics are way more common than we like to admit. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting me through this journey. Remember, your kindness is a gift, not a weakness, and you deserve relationships built on honesty and respect. Take care of yourselves out there and never let anyone convince you that love means accepting abuse.